Chris is basically a jack of all trades, but a master of none. He's just an average guy with a talent that lets him learn anything in an instant. To make a name for himself, he ended up joining the hero's party. With his talent, he played a significant role in the party, handling all sorts of tasks, which earned him the nickname, the Great Extra. But before he could truly blossom and harness his potential, he met a tragic end when the Age of Destruction began. It was during the time when the Demon King of Carnage, who hailed from the Magic Empire, started wreaking havoc in the Dominion of Light, and Hero Evan was not strong enough to stop him. As expected, they failed, and the Dominion of Light eventually fell into the hands of the Demon King of Carnage. Before dying, Hero Evan had one last wish. He wanted Chris to ascend to the role of hero. He wished he could turn back time and make this last wish turn into reality. However, Chris didn't share the same sentiments. After enduring so much hardship in life, this death felt more like mercy, a gateway to freedom from misery. Even if given a second chance, Chris would rather have been born into a rich family. That was his final thought before he perished and regressed back in time. He was reborn into the body of a young master of the Magic Empire, the very empire from which the Demon King of Carnage hailed from. For extra context, the Dominion of Light is the place where humans live, while the Magic Empire is the place where demons live, which are also called fiends. The place he was born into was the Dark Magic Clan, one of the 12 clans that support the Magic Empire, as his eerie name suggests. From what he understands, he had regressed 15 years back in time, 5 years before the beginning of the Age of Destruction. Now Chris is a rich brat, but the owner of the body he now possesses is far from pleasant. He's inhabiting the body of Christian Van Baron Khazar. According to Chris's past life memories, Christian inherits the noble Van as his middle name, meaning he's part of a branch family. The House of Count Khazar is a branch family of Baron County, also known as the Dark Magic Clan. Although the Khazar family is just a branch, it still holds a lot of power and influence due to its good standing within the Dark Magic Clan. Their wealth only amplifies their influence. To further emphasize the Khazar family's status, there's not a single fiend within the Magic Empire who doesn't recognize their influence. The Khazar family has 2 potential heirs, but the eldest son, Christian, is a troublemaker who always attracts problems. But the crucial thing to note here is that Christian was eventually murdered by his relatives. This is brutal news for Chris, who has just inherited Christian's body and is now about to die. All Chris ever wanted was to be born as the son of a regular rich family with no unnecessary drama. But beating himself up over his bad luck won't do him any good. So he needs to think hard about what to do to avoid dying. He still has 2 years before Christian dies. It's important to note that he was eliminated within the House of Count Khazar, a family that places great importance on honor. This likely means Christian was an absolute good-for-nothing, and thus murdered by his own family in order to avoid any damage to the family's name. So, Chris hopes that if he becomes a nice person and keeps a low profile, he might dodge that death bullet. Now that the issue of dying has been dealt with, Chris starts thinking about living a comfortable life with all the money he has. But his daydreams soon hit a snag when he remembers the Age of Destruction that will start in the future. The Demon King of Carnage started the war to sacrifice humanity and complete Ragnarok. By the time anyone realized this, it was already too late, and both the Dominion of Light and the Magic Empire met their tragic ends because of Demon King's selfish desire. If Chris truly wants to survive, he'll have to figure out a way to stop the coming apocalypse. The Demon King of Carnage is powerful on his own, but he also has an entire army of loyal fiends from the Magic Empire. The only way Chris can stop all this madness is to become more powerful than the Demon King of Carnage. The only way to do that is to become the Demon Emperor himself and sit at the pinnacle of the Magic Empire. He has 5 years before the Age of Destruction begins, which is enough time to come up with a plan. If he succeeds, there's no doubt that the entire Magic Empire will belong to him. Later, we see Christian getting scolded by his father for leaving his room, despite being grounded. The head of the house isn't stomaching the fact that Chris dared to show his filthy mug without properly repenting for the embarrassing incident he caused not long ago. Count Khazar gives him one last warning, making it clear that his next act of negligence will be his last, once his head is chopped off his body. The menacing, almost suffocating aura of Count Khazar is so intimidating that Chris is literally shuddering instinctively. Eventually, he sincerely apologizes for all the wrongdoings he has committed until now. Chris is trying to mend his relationship with Count Khazar because he wants to get rid of the bad image everyone holds of Christian. This is the only way he can move forward with his plans. He continues his apologies, hoping to sway the Count's heart. But it looks like a few words of apology aren't cutting it. The Count has no intention of believing his son's words after all the trouble he has caused. Meanwhile, Chris is trying to figure out what in the hell this bastard Christian pulled off to make the Count lose all trust in him. There are so many horror stories Chris has heard about Christian that he isn't even sure which one is the most recent. So, He reminds his father that he lost a portion of his memories a few days ago. Because of that, he doesn't even remember what he did that made his father lose all trust in him. He goes on to say that, in an effort to remember, he reflected on his past actions, only to realize how awful he had been all this time. He completely owns up to the downfall he caused to his father's reputation. But even with all of this, the Count is still unwilling to believe him. After all, he has heard these excuses countless times before. Seeing no other way to convince his father, Chris decides to go extreme. He sincerely requests to be sent into the punishment cave, offering to spend up to a month there to prove that he has truly changed. Here's a quick explanation of the punishment cave. Apparently, it's a place made to imprison high-status fiends. There's no light, and all 5 of the captive's senses are blocked. It only takes a few days before a captive's mind is completely broken, driving them into madness. With that in mind, Count Khazar doubts Chris would even last a few hours, let alone an entire month. Chris has already considered all possibilities, but this is the only way left to earn his father's trust, so he is willing to take on the challenge. Count Khazar, having seen Christian make countless big promises before, is hesitant. Every time it ended in disappointment. But this time, he's willing to play along and give him one last chance. However, he makes one thing abundantly clear. If Chris fails to prove he's a different person after spending an entire month there, he will be banished from the clan. Chris already knows that being banished is basically a death sentence. There are countless enemies Christian has made in his life, and the moment he loses the protection of the clan, they will all come for his life. Still, my guy accepts the challenge. However, if he succeeds, he wants his father to grant him one favor. Count Khazar scoffs at Chris's confidence but agrees nonetheless, so long as he truly changes for the better, though he highly doubts that's even remotely possible. Later, as Chris sits in his lavish room, a fiend arrives to inform him that the punishment cave has been prepared. This guy's name is Cox, a half-vampire and the butler of the house of Count Khazar. Chris acknowledges his words, and after a while he begins making his way there, carrying a luggage bag on his shoulders. As he walks through the corridors, every servant and household member whispers among themselves. They're all convinced this good-for-nothing must be plotting something again. They recall the recent trouble he caused, insulting the young lady of the Poison Magic clan. The mess was so bad that Count Khazar had to personally bow his head and apologize to the Poison Magic clan. Now it makes sense why the Count was so furious and dismissive of Christian earlier. The humiliation must have been so bad that the man probably wanted to die from embarrassment. Some people in the background even start betting that Christian won't last more than 2 days in the punishment cave. But my guy just smirks in confidence because he knows he's about to subvert their expectations. Meanwhile, his little brother watches from the sidelines, keeping a close eye on him. A while later, they finally arrive at the punishment cave. To emphasize just how dangerous and please don't come closer this place is, 2 Death Knights stand as guards at the entrance. They might look intimidating, but there's no one stopping Chris from entering. However, just as he's about to enter, his little brother calls out from behind. Here is a quick introduction to this puny punk. As you already know, he is Christian's biological younger brother and a model student, Thurn van Boren Khazar. The rest of the introduction can wait because, out of nowhere, this little guy pulls a fast one on his older brother, stopping the sharp tip of his sword just before Chris's eyes. While our boy doesn't react outwardly, his soul inside him has literally died of a heart attack at the sight of that attack coming. Still, Chris keeps his composure and questions his little brother, asking what he's doing here. It turns out Thurn is just here to remind his older brother how pathetic he is. He warns him that if he tarnishes the family name any further, he might as well be dead. Seeing this feisty little punk, Chris is pretty sure Thurn was the one responsible for Christian's death in his previous life. Chris has actually met Thurn before during the Age of Destruction. He was a fiend famous for curse magic. Anyway, Chris reacts to his little brother with a stern glare. Of course, those intense glares make Thurn shudder, while Chris just keeps his tough guy act and enters the cave, shutting the door behind him. This display of attitude leaves Thurn absolutely enraged, as he's not used to seeing this side of his older brother. Cutting back to Chris, he walks through the dark cave, unable to see or hear anything. There's only the faintest sensation left around his fingertips. Thinking about it, this sensation seems deliberately left there so that prisoners can feel the objects they bring inside. Otherwise, they might starve to death if they can't fumble through their supplies. Still, an ordinary person would quickly feel mentally drained in such a place. But this doesn't affect Chris. After all, he's experienced worse during his time as a treasure hunter. To be honest, having his senses cut off is exactly how he wanted it. This way, he can focus inward and look inside himself. It's the only way he'll be able to fix this wreck of a body. Sure, it will take time and a whole lot of luck, but with the medical skills he learned back when they called him the Divine Hand, plus the bone compression art he modified, he is sure that he can pull this off. And being the rich guy he is now, he has access to magic stones with various properties, so fixing his body in this place won't be a problem at all. He honestly thought he wouldn't be able to get his hands on magic stones since they're so expensive. But it looks like this is one of the perks of being rich. In his previous life, Hero Evan and he had to struggle just to obtain them. His first step will be to use a white magic stone, which will purify any toxins in his body. It might be a boring process, but it's an essential stage. He'll need to meticulously clean the toxin buildup across his body with white mana. Even the smallest mistake would cause immense pain, but for Chris, it's a walk in the park. He can handle it just fine without even putting much effort into it. Meanwhile, back with Count Khazar. He asks his butler about Christian. The butler reveals that Christian obediently entered the punishment cave. He's sure that Christian is going to be so wrecked that he won't even have the strength to call for help. These unsettling words only serve to make Count Khazar even more worried. He starts questioning himself, wondering if it was the right decision to let him go inside. Count reflects on how Christian had such a promising future as a child, so he is unsure how he could have broken apart so suddenly. For a moment, he even starts to question if Christian's exceptional talents went to his head. Regardless of the reason behind his downfall, the Count would rather see Christian die crippled than live miserably. As much as he wants to place faith in Christian's words, he just can't bring himself to do it. After all, this isn't the first time his son has tricked him with smooth talk. Count then questions his butler, asking if he noticed Christian carrying anything when he entered the cave. The butler hesitates to reveal anything, but under Count Khazar's scrutiny, he's forced to open his mouth. He reveals that Christian carried magic stones with him into the cave. Among them were dreamstones, which can make anyone hallucinate. The butler fears that since they don't know what exactly Christian is up to, they should open the cave immediately. But Count Khazar responds sternly with a firm no. Even if Christian is plotting something shady, it's all the more reason to let him die there miserably. A month passes, and Count Khazar finds himself standing right outside the cave's entrance. Before Chris even makes an appearance, the Count has already convinced himself that his son is as good as wrecked by now. But of course his expectations are completely subverted when he sees Christian emerging from the cave, with a broad smile on his face. As surprising as it is, there's no denying that Christian has fulfilled his promise by returning as a completely different person. The Count can't help but notice the brightness in his son's eyes, something he hasn't seen since Christian was a child. This change might be admirable, but Count Khazar isn't about to loosen up immediately. He's still firm in his belief that this small achievement isn't enough to convince him that his son has truly changed. However, Christian doesn't back down. He makes it clear that he'll keep working even harder if that's what it takes. Christian is certain his father believes he barely endured the cave, but that's far from the truth. In fact, Christian was so busy training that he didn't even have time to get bored. First off, he optimized his body to master swordplay. Thanks to the white mana stone, he never ran out of juice. But the real game changer was the dreamstone. The butler had tried to stop him from bringing a narcotic mana stone into the cave, but Christian was glad he had stubbornly brought them anyway. The hallucinations caused by the dreamstone drastically reduced the time it took for his metamorphosis. On top of that, he created 2 cores within himself. Christian couldn't help but feel proud of everything he achieved in that deadly cave. He was convinced he was a genius. After all, having 2 cores wasn't something you came across every day. Because of this, he hid his light core inside his darkness core. If anyone discovered this, their reaction would be nothing short of explosive. But his luck didn't stop there. He sensed that someone in the cave was hoping he would break down under the hallucinations, but Christian used that as a catalyst to push himself even further. Back in the present, Christian wants to cash in on the favor his father promised him. He requests permission to use the Black Swamp Knights training grounds. Of course, Count Khazar's face immediately twists with annoyance at such a bold and reckless request. As far as the Count is concerned, a good-for-nothing like Christian has no business being there. After all, the Black Swamp Knights are one of the 3 orders of knights that support the Dark Magic clan, and only the most elite knights are allowed to display their skills there. But Christian stands firm. He's not asking to join their order, just to borrow their training grounds. He believes that watching the bravery of the Black Swamp Knights will have a positive influence on him. After a brief pause, Count Khazar agrees, though he issues a stern warning. Don't disgrace yourself in front of the knights, or it will end with your death. Christian acknowledges the warning, and before his father can leave, he asks for another favor. Later, Christian arrives at the training grounds. As he's minding his business, some knights in the background start murmuring among themselves, recognizing him as the good-for-nothing young master. The knights don't even try to hide the fact that they're bad-mouthing the Count's son, which speaks volumes about the state of the magic empire. Here, strength matters more than social status. There's another reason Christian wanted to come to the Black Swamp Knights training grounds. He apparently wants access to enter the library. His father had told him that he could only enter the library once he obtained Deputy Commander Melon's letter of recommendation. Only then would Count Khazar grant him the key. You see, the library houses all the dark magic grimoires of the Khazar house, and to learn dark magic, Chris must gain access. While Chris doesn't object to the condition, he's puzzled as to why it's even necessary since he's an important member of the clan. His father reminds him of the time Christian tried to sell the advanced grimoires on the black market. Even Chris has started to question the kind of life Christian led back then. The title, Good for Nothing, is certainly fitting. Now Chris's top priority is to get the deputy commander's recommendation. Among the knights standing around, Chris's little brother is present too. He doesn't waste a second before throwing a barrage of colorful remarks at his older brother. Of course, Christian finds it a drag that he has to deal with this brat once again. But as he thinks it over, a smile forms on his face. This might actually be a good opportunity for him. Thurn walks up to his older brother, orders him to turn around, and never return. He insists that Christian should not throw away the life he narrowly saved in the punishment cave. But Chris remains as sassy as ever, making the brat shudder once again by revealing that it was their father who gave him permission to enter the training grounds. At that moment, another prominent figure walks into the scene. This woman's glare could cut through steel, and it's clear she can't stomach Christian's presence here. Doesn't matter even if the Count gave him permission. For the record, this intimidating lady is Deputy Commander Melon. Her presence alone fills the air with 4-star dark energy, a clear attempt to scare Chris into running away like a sobbing child. But as we know, this is far from enough to intimidate our boy. The onlookers notice how Christian is completely unshaken by her dark energy, and even she tenses up upon realizing how unhinged he seems in the face of it. Christian greets her calmly and initiates the conversation. He acknowledges the wrongdoings of his past and the lack of trust people have in him, but he's ready to prove that he's qualified to use the training grounds. Christian proposes that he will fight against one of the fiends present here and prove himself by winning. Naturally, Deputy Commander Melon dismisses his suggestion as nothing more than a joke. But Christian isn't here to joke around. In a calm tone, he requests that she refrain from using her dark energy during their interaction. He humbly asks for an unarmed duel, as his capacity for dark energy is currently not what it should be due to his debauched lifestyle. Melon considers his request. Even if this is a duel, she can't afford to let the heir get hurt. So she asks him once again if he truly has what it takes to engage in an unarmed duel. Christian remains confident and states that he would like to choose his opponent, none other than his brat of a little brother, Thurn. This infuriates Thurn, who's absolutely livid at being challenged by his good-for-nothing brother. Even Melon thinks Christian is putting his hands into a lion's maw. She warns him to choose his opponent more wisely, considering Thurn is already at 2-star level. For context, 2-star is a level that few 13-year-olds can ascend to. If you don't have the raw talent for it, it doesn't matter if you're 13 or 23. You won't even scratch the surface of this level, let alone ascend to it. But as we already know, Christian is no pushover either. He firmly declares that he wants to fight someone stronger than him, because this is the only way he can prove himself. Fighting Thurn, he believes, is the optimal choice. However, there's a catch. If Thurn is too scared to fight his own brother, it changes the whole dynamic of the duel. Naturally, Thurn falls for the bait and accepts the duel. Soon, the two face off in the center of the training grounds. The other fiends circle around them, eagerly waiting for Thurn to win and for Christian to taste the bitter sting of defeat. But before the duel begins, Christian wants to know how the winner will be decided. He suggests that they fight until one of them surrenders. Melon, clearly displeased with Christian, proposes instead that they continue until one side is completely incapacitated. This way, she believes Thurn will have the chance to seriously cripple his brother, as he wouldn't have the option to surrender. My guy, however, is more worried about his opponent than himself. He doesn't want to seriously beat his little brother. Of course, these jabs rile Thurn up even further, and he's more enraged than ever, itching to show his older brother what's what. Chris seizes the opportunity and makes his first move by slapping the living shit out of his brother. The slap is humiliating and uncalled for, but the duel has already started, so it's all fair game. Thurn tries to slap back, but Christian easily dodges it by simply ducking backward. If Chris is being honest, this is practically an unfair fight with all the odds stacked against him. As a fiend who hasn't even reached 1-star yet, he stands no chance against someone with dark energy. However, in a barehanded duel, things are a little different. Thurn's clumsy moves give Chris the perfect opportunity to strike back, and Chris delivers a gut-wrenching knee smash right into Thurn's stomach. The reason Chris is prevailing in this barehanded fight is the experience he's accumulated from countless battles in his past life. Moreover, if he only counts the dominion of light powers achieved in the punishment cave, he's already at 3-star level. So basically, his brat of a brother doesn't stand a chance. Thurn is looking worse for wear after taking such a beating, and even the onlookers are in absolute awe. Meanwhile, Chris starts throwing jabs to further annoy his little brother. It looks like his silly remarks are doing the trick. Internally, he is having an absolute blast watching this brat struggle. Thurn, on the other hand, is certain that Christian must be using some kind of trick. Christian lets him know there are no tricks at play. It's simply that Thurn is weak sauce. That remark hits hard and Thurn feels the sting. While Chris continues his goofy teasing, Thurn can't take it anymore. He balls up his fist, dark energy exuding from him ominously, and throws a punch. Chris easily avoids the direct hit, but Thurn continues his relentless barrage of punches, none of which even scratch Chris. Eventually, Chris parries one of the punches, and after canceling out his little brother's dark energy, he lands a brutal hit on him. That one punch is enough to make Thurn cough up blood before collapsing to the ground. The spectators burst into murmurs and gossip, believing that Thurn must have let his guard down, or simply didn't want to hurt his trash of a brother. After all, Thurn getting knocked out by his good-for-nothing older brother doesn't make sense. But Deputy Commander Melon knows exactly what just happened, and it's causing her to go absolutely bonkers with astonishment. Chris, on the other hand, wants Melon to confirm if he's proven himself, or if there's still something left to do. Melon, still stunned, confirms that he has indeed proven himself. This confirmation sounds like music to Christian's ears, and now he's ready to set his next plan into motion. Later, sitting in his room, Chris reflects on how he's finally reached 1 star in dark magic. Since he's still not fully accustomed to handling dark energy, and there was a lot of residue left over by Christian, it took longer than expected. As for wielding the power of light at the same time, he'll need to raise his level further before that's possible. Suddenly, his assigned maid, Marie, appears upon his call. She's actually a high-level evil spirit, a banshee. Chris can't help but feel a little spooked to see that they're using a spirit as his maid. He's so creeped out that he even thinks about requesting the Count to replace her. Anyhow, he orders her to fetch some juice, planning to drink it before he starts his training. Marie acknowledges his orders but wants to confirm if she should prepare the juice with human blood, since blood juice tastes far better than anything else. She continues to insist on the blood juice, while Christian, totally disturbed by her morbid suggestions, just wants strawberry juice, nothing more. A while later, as Christian is about to leave to train, the butler calls out to him from behind, suggesting he reconsider going. The butler expresses concern that Christian has been pushing himself too hard lately. He is clearly proud and pleased to see how diligent and sincere the young master has been, even if everyone else deemed him good for nothing. He's always believed in Christian. Christian, however, can see through this bastard's hypocrisy. He shoots the butler a deadly glare, not wanting any validation from a lowly servant. The poor butler quickly apologizes, as he didn't mean to overstep his boundaries. With those words, the poor guy leaves, not before wishing Christian a good training session. Chris, however, feels something suspicious about this guy, but he can't quite place his finger on what's wrong. Later, as Chris walks through the grounds, he notices how the behavior and the look in the eyes of the people around him have become softer and more docile towards him. He sees this as a great opportunity to win them over, little by little. After all, when the iron is hot, why not strike? After putting his bag down, he begins swinging his sword. A fiend takes notice of this and promptly goes to Deputy Commander Melon to report it. He reports that young Master Christian has shown up at the training grounds again today. Hearing this, Deputy Commander Melon grows serious, her curiosity piqued by Christian's actions. She can't ignore how impressive his movements were during his duel with Thurn. Refined and precise. She's eager to find out what Christian is really plotting. What has her on the edge of her seat is the fact that Christian was able to dispel his brother's dark energy at the perfect moment. This revelation explains how he had control of the battle from the very start. If that's the case, he might even have the talent to surpass Lord Eshid de Baron, who is the direct heir of the main family. But then again, Christian is just a bastard who's already lost his dark energy due to his debauched lifestyle. There's no way he can close the enormous power gap between himself and Lord Eshid de Baron. Melon steps outside, pretending she's unaware of Christian's presence. When she actually steps out, she notices that Christian has dropped his opponent, Cannon. The onlookers are in awe that he defeated one of their own who is a 1-star fiend. It's unfathomable that this bastard has reached 1 star. Even Melon can't help but stare in awe. Christian, on the other hand, feels disappointed by how weak these highly regarded Black Swamp Knights are. No one seems to pose a real challenge to him. He wonders if anyone here has what it takes to be a true fighter. Naturally, the fiends who hear Christian's jab grow visibly agitated, seeing how he's throwing shade at their ranks. One of the big fiends, named Torin, steps forward to challenge Christian. Seeing this, Chris merely gestures for the big bastard to come forward. He's absolutely thrilled that these clowns are falling right into his traps. Torin, eager for the fight, swings his sword, and they engage in a fierce back and forth. As they exchange blows, Chris reflects on how he never expected them to obediently teach him their knight's secret techniques. He's taking notes on every movement his opponent makes, mapping out the techniques in his mind. It doesn't take long before he realizes that the swordsmanship technique Torin is using is known as mud swordsmanship, a highly rumored style. After noting the technique, he decides to try it out for himself. The moment he does, he lands a precise strike right across Torin's face. With just that much, the once mighty Tauren is kissing the ground. As usual, the other fiends witnessing this fight are in utter awe, including Deputy Commander Melon. She now fully realizes that Christian's previous victory against Thurn was no fluke. Once again, my guy expresses his disappointment. Before all this, he used to hold these knights in high regard, but now they've turned out to be nothing more than punching bags. He then directly throws shade at Deputy Commander Melon for nurturing such weak and pathetic warriors. The fiends on the sidelines know full well that Christian should not be messing with Deputy Commander Melon, and Melon thinks the same. She's sure that Christian's unexpected victories are getting to his head. But my guy is ready to prove his prowess, and to do that, he directly challenges her. Of course, the lady takes the bait. In a fit of rage, she swings her sword so hard that the sheer pressure obliterates the ground beneath them. By now, she is absolutely losing it, her rage bubbling up after the constant humiliation Christian has caused her. This display of power is meant to show that she could take him down in seconds if she had to. My guy doesn't shy away from admitting that she indeed has the upper hand with her full strength, but he argues that it's not fair. According to the rules, the use of dark energy is only allowed against opponents up to 1-star level. And since he is only 1-star level, she can't possibly use dark magic against him. She is only allowed to use dark energy. He claims it's only fair they fight with wooden swords. Melon agrees to his suggestion. Even with this handicap, she's sure she can obliterate his legs with just a wooden sword. No need to waste any time with jibber-jabber, let the battle begin. Deputy Commander Melon takes the initiative, throwing her sword down at Christian. He blocks her direct attack with his own sword, and they engage in a fierce exchange of blows. Their movements are so fast that the onlookers can barely follow. What's even more mind-boggling is that Christian is holding his own against her. Even Melon herself is starting to get agitated, realizing that no attacks are landing on him. Even though he's just a weakling and shouldn't stand a chance against her, the situation is eerily similar to the previous fights where his opponents failed to land a single blow on him. Seeing the distress on her face, Chris can't help but throw jabs at her, which only further irritates her. She raises her sword, charging it with dark energy, and brings it crashing down. But Christian dodges it with ease, charging at her and landing a hard head smash straight to her face. The impact causes her nose to burst. This strike was a calculated risk from our boy's side. He realized that as long as Melon's dark magic was bound, she wouldn't be able to block such an opening with just physical strength alone. His hunch was right on the money. If Melon were a fiend who focused solely on the sword, that wouldn't have worked. Instead of breaking into a cold sweat after having her blood spilled, Melon bursts into hearty laughter. She finds it kind of adorable and funny because she never expected him to headbutt her. Finally, she admits that she was wrong to look down on him, and promises to personally give him the extra attention he deserves to help increase his growth. But then, Christian reveals something shocking. When he headbutted her, he scratched her neck. If his nails had been laced with poison, she would have been a goner by now. Melon sincerely accepts her defeat and is ready to grant him whatever wish he requires. However, she wants another duel with him. Chris has no problem with a rematch, but he makes a request in return. Melon agrees without hesitation. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Chris asks if she can kneel before him. It's a shocking request. For Melon, this is an impossible ask. Her loyalty lies with the main family of the Dark Magic clan, House Baron. Chris acknowledges what she's implying but assures her it won't matter when he ascends as the next leader of the clan, ultimately making him the top dog. Melon is taken aback by this, dismissing it as wishful thinking. After all, there are 5 young lords recognized for succession rights, and they're all direct descendants of the main family. Christian, as a bastard, doesn't stand a chance. Christian flashes a cunning smile, reminding Melon that there's no rule preventing a branch family member from becoming a young lord. Regardless, he accepts the challenge for another duel. However, their next fight will take place in a month, and there will be no restrictions, meaning they can go all out. Melon has no problem with this. In fact, she can already envision the humiliating defeat that awaits him. Chris, on the other hand, warns her not to be too sure. After all, the world is unpredictable. With that, he bids her farewell and promises to see her in a month. He silently vows to make her realize who her true loyalty belongs to. Later, Christian presents the letter of recommendation from Deputy Commander Melon to his father. As he hands over the recommendation letter, he also takes the opportunity to provide feedback on the Fiend's lackluster fundamentals and suggests that more focus be placed on their training. The scene then shifts to a little earlier, where Melon, having faced Christian on the battlefield, reveals everything to his father regarding his growth. Despite his low star rank, he easily defeated opponents with solid foundations, and even Melon herself had been humbled by his unexpected skill. She admits she enjoyed the fight, though the defeat caught her off guard. In the present, the Count continues to stare at his son, taking a long, silent moment to make sure the person standing before him is indeed Christian. Finally, he extends his hand, handing over the key to the library. Later, Christian feels a sense of satisfaction while holding on to the key. Not only did he obtain the library key, but he also earned Melon's trust. You see, Melon is a fiend from the main family of the Dark Magic clan, was once a 6-star high fiend during the Age of Destruction. If Christian wants to take control of the entire Dark Magic clan, he must have her on his side. He hasn't completely won her over yet, but he's confident that a month will be enough time. As he walks away, feeling proud of his achievements, he recalls Count Khazar's confused yet undeniably proud expression. Chris recognizes that even fiends have familial attachments, and he can tell that Count Khazar is a far better father than the one he had in his previous life. For that reason, he promises himself to make his new father proud. Once inside the library, Chris takes note of all the grimoires forbidden in the Dominion of Light, such as blood magic, summoning studies, and curse studies among them. He pulls a book from the shelf, but just as he does, his evil spirit maid suddenly appears, startling him. When he asks what she's doing there, she reveals that she used to be the librarian in this very place. She also admits that she has feelings for Christian, but he doesn't reciprocate her affections. Despite this, she continues to flirt with him, much to his discomfort. On a more serious note, she points out that the grimoire Christian chose is a 4-star dark magic book known as Binding Seal, and she's not sure how he plans to comprehend it. Christian, puffing up his chest, confidently declares that he's a genius. Marie, not buying this crap, nonetheless puts on a supportive facade and praises him. Out of curiosity, she asks why he chose this book, and he cryptically replies that he's trying to catch a rat. The suspense hangs in the air as the scene transitions to Chris doing his usual drills with the fiends. He reflects on his potential suspects that might be the rats he is looking for. First in the list is Thurn, his little brother, who despises him more than anyone in the house. Second is Cox, their butler, who isn't a descendant of the clan but has free access to the punishment cave. Fiends hold the powerful people in higher regard than those of who are of higher social status, so it doesn't make sense for Cox to be circling around a guy like him who is just a weak sauce. It's possible there's a third party behind Cox's actions, but whoever it is wants to bring Christian down. What's most notable, though, is that Cox gave him a dreamstone before he headed to the punishment cave, which is effectively a death sentence. To catch the rats, Chris decides to play the role of the bastard his enemies want him to be. If they see him running his life into the ground, they'll likely get hopeful, making it easier for him to spot who's behind the scheme. He abruptly stops in the middle of his training, throwing a tantrum about how difficult everything is. He quits the drills for the day, deciding to rest. His sudden change catches the others off guard, just as he expected. Later, at the dining table with his father, Chris throws a scene. His father, boiling with fury, feels like a fool for ever thinking his son could redeem himself. In immense disappointment, he leaves the table. As Chris watches the Count sulk, he feels a twinge of sadness, but he knows it's for the greater good of the family. He works hard to spread rumors that he's returned to his old and rebellious ways, like bullying maids while they clean, wasting money like it's water. But when he wants to drink alcohol, his personal maid always makes wine with no trace of alcohol. Chris tries to get her to make real alcoholic drinks because this is part of his plan to catch a rat. He's hoping whoever is behind the plot will think he's back to being the wasteful bastard they want him to be. He then shows his mastery of the Binding Seal spell that catches even his loyal maid off guard. She is left bewildered to see that he has already mastered the spell, but Chris wastes no time in bragging about his genius, something he's been claiming all along. He explains that while all the time he spent causing trouble, he was also secretly studying in order to master multiple spells. Before he can celebrate, his little brother Thurn arrives in his room unannounced. Seeing this, Christian quickly flips his mental switch and instantly transforms from the sober genius into a drunken degenerate bastard, playing the role of a loser. Thurn's eyes narrow with anger as he is finally convinced that nothing has changed about his bozo brother. This angry and intense reaction of Thurn confirms to Chris that he is not involved in any of the schemes against him. Since Thurn is clean, he decides to share a part of his secret with him, revealing that there's a rat in the house, a traitor who wishes to see his downfall. Chris plans to play the part of the reckless fool for now, pretending to be exactly what his enemies want him to be, so they can be easily identified. To further convince his brother, he shows him the wine he's been drinking, letting Thurn smell it to show that it's fake, meant only to maintain his facade. While Chris is still unsure who the rat is, he's certain he's getting closer to luring them out. Just then, a servant rushes in after hearing the sound of breaking glass. Christian immediately returns to his drunken persona, demanding the servant tell the butler that the wine he sent is the wrong one, and to bring him the proper bottle. The servant apologizes profusely before informing Chris that Cox is currently busy. Chris, still acting like a sailor after too many drinks, decides to pay the butler a personal visit. His brother, in the background, can only watch in disbelief seeing how realistically this bastard is performing the role of drunkard bozo. When Christian finally meets Cox, he deliberately flips the bottle of wine over the butler's head, causing it to spill all over him. He accuses him of trying to play dirty tricks by sending him the wrong wine. Cox apologizes and insists that the proper wine will be brought immediately. Chris, however, insists that he fetch it himself. Cox tries to remain calm while explaining that he's dealing with something more pressing and suggests the wine can be delivered later. But Christian continues to push, trying to get a rise out of Cox. Eventually, Cox leaves to retrieve the wine. Chris is astounded by this bastard's patience. Though Cox can mask his emotions, Chris can feel the hostility radiating from him. Once Chris is alone, he begins to go through the documents the butler had been preparing. As he scans the papers, a broad smile spreads across his face when he notices that Butler had been doing embezzlement of funds. If Cox is truly a rat, it's natural that he has tampered with the finances, but there's no clear evidence yet to confirm that he is indeed the rat. Soon enough, Cox returns with the correct wine. Christian, still playing his role, accepts the bottle and wonders if the butler is angry with him for his impudent behavior. The butler, however, appears to be grateful for the opportunity to serve his young master. Before he leaves, Cox relays a message that there are Christian's friends who want to meet him at their usual hideout. Of course, Chris has no idea who these friends actually are. Cox warns him to avoid them, claiming they are trouble. But this only intrigues Chris more, inciting him to meet these mysterious individuals. At the hideout, we are greeted by a lavish spread of food. As Chris sits there, his attention is immediately drawn to the terrified maid serving drinks. He can't help but comment on how these pigs have made the poor girl pour drinks for their fat asses. As she serves him a glass, he notices something off about it. Without hesitation, he throws the wine in the face of the fatty sitting at the table. He does not beat around the bush before accusing them of spiking his drink with something shady. Before things can escalate further, he uses dark magic to knock the maid unconscious, not wanting to traumatize her with the scene that is about to unfold. The group is stunned to see him use dark magic, surprised that Christian has already learned such powerful techniques. But before they can react, my guy slams both of the culprits onto the table, causing blood to splatter. The fatty demands to know why he was attacked. Chris, in response, pulls out a dagger, because he won't tolerate any pretenses from them. After some interrogation, the skinny man finally confesses that they were only following orders from someone who had blackmailed them with drugs he and his friend smuggled. They had been ordered to frame Christian for a murder they intended to commit on the maid. Chris presses them for the identity of the mastermind. The skinny guy hesitates, but in order to make him speak, my guy lets this bastard know who is calling the shots here. Reluctantly, the skinny bastard reveals the truth. Cox is the one behind the plot. With everything exposed, the both guys beg for their lives, promising to do whatever Christian commands. Christian, after a brief moment of contemplation, agrees to spare them on the condition that they follow his orders without question. Just in case, he makes them promise this twice, and once they promise, he uses his binding spell over them. The next day, Cox rushes to Count Khazar to report that Christian has committed murder. He claims that Christian, drunk, killed the servant girl who had been serving his drinks and dumped her body into the river. Hearing this, the Count immediately orders that Christian be brought before the Fiend Court to answer for his actions. At the court, Christian immediately pleads his innocence. The Count, however, is not convinced and insists that the testimonies of witnesses will prove his guilt. Christian calmly declares that the murder never happened, and therefore, the witnesses must be mistaken. To prove his point, Christian points to the maid, who, to everyone's shock, walks into the courtroom perfectly alive and well. The two conspirators begins to panic when they realize that they are about to get screwed. The maid reveals that Christian actually helped her by escorting her home and even giving her money to help pay her rent. As far as she's concerned, it was the two men standing there who tried to kill her. The court erupts in shock, and the two culprits are exposed for their treachery. To hammer the final nail in the coffin, my guy uses his magic mojo and makes his two friends talk like the parrots they are under his command. They admit to giving a false report about Christian taking the life of a young girl. Furthermore, they were ordered by Butler Cox to frame the young master for this murder. Unsurprisingly, the butler begins to panic and starts defending himself as if his life depends on it, which, well, it does. Chris already knew this jackass would react exactly like this, so he had already prepared for it. He addresses his father and requests to borrow his authority for a while because he has a direct question he wants to ask Butler Cox. He promises that this one question alone will separate the milk from the water. His father agrees and promptly gives Cox the opportunity to defend himself. So Cox is advised to stand in the defendant's stand. Before Chris can ascend to jury's stand, his father lets him know that if he abuses his authority, he will be stripped off it immediately. Once Chris ascends to the judge's stand, he proceeds to question Cox with the authority he has been granted. First of all, he wants defendant Cox to swear that he will speak nothing but the truth. Cox, of course, swears right away, not that he has a choice. But as soon as Cox swears twice, my guy uses his binding seal magic on him. Even the people in the courtroom can't help but notice. Their reaction is one of awe because there is no way in hell a mere brat should be able to wield 4-star dark magic. Before proceeding further, we learn a little about this binding seal. Basically, my guy modified the binding seal so it could be used even with a lower star rank. However, it has additional conditions. Chris needs the target to swear twice. Now it makes sense why he made Cox swear twice, and also why he made those two goons promise twice before hijacking their brains. Now that the binding seal is a success, my guy questions this shithead about why he hired those two to slander his name. The binding seal begins consuming Cox's mind when he tries to avoid answering. He manages to endure the pain for a bit, but eventually he reveals that he received orders from someone. The man who gave him the order also threatened him about the corruption he had been involved in with the finances, so Cox had no choice but to comply. Before making Cox admit anything further, my guy wants him to confirm whether he is talking about the embezzlement he has been committing behind the Count's back. After confirming this little fact, Chris proceeds further with the trial, asking about the person who gave him the order. When Cox refuses to speak, the pain intensifies, forcing him to utter the name Sir Eshid. This news drops like a nuke on everyone when they realize that it was the second son of the Dark Magic clan, Sir Eshid de Baron, who was pulling the strings. Cox further reveals that now that he has spilled everything, he will be killed by Eshid. But before Sir Eshid can pose any threat to Cox's life, my guy severs this traitor's head right in front of Count Khazar. Before anyone can start yapping about his bold move, Chris clarifies that he punished the sinner under the authority he borrowed from the Count. The Count then questions Christian about why he deemed Cox deserving of a death sentence. Well, Chris's reason is simple. Even if this bastard were left alive, the Main family would likely fabricate evidence and cover up the incident. And getting on the Main family's bad side is the last thing they can afford. Furthermore, this incident has revealed to everyone how Eshid tried to sabotage him. In the next moment, Count Khazar conjures a portal, and both father and son step into the secret training grounds to have a private chat. After all, there were just too many people in the courtroom. From what the Count understands, the only reason Eshid is causing trouble is because of the succession conflict. The Count knows very well that one family's power and authority are directly tied to the successor they support, so it's only natural for Eshid to feel threatened. However, with things as they stand now, the Count wants to support the first young lady since the first young lord is not an option. But this is then Chris puts himself up as the next option. He wants to volunteer to become the next successor. It goes without saying that the Count is dismissive of the idea. It's impossible. But Christian reminds his father that anyone from a branch family can be recognized as a potential successor if they possess the necessary ability. His father, however, believes that this is only true on paper. Something like this happening in their clan is unprecedented. That's when Chris reminds his father that Eshid sees him as a potential rival, which is the only reason he wanted to eliminate him. The Count does acknowledge that Christian might have been more talented than Eshid during childhood, but as of now, Eshid is far ahead. Chris, however, believes that he has already started catching up, and to speed up his growth even further, he wants his father to use his authority to recommend him for the Sacred Dark Rite, which is set to take place 2 months from now. The Count reminds him that one must be at least a 2-star to even consider participating in the rite. Well, that's the least of Christian's concerns. He promises to reach 2-star within the next 2 months, so he hopes his father will grant him this favor. Well, looks like the Count has no choice but to heed the young master's command. Later, we see servants murmuring among themselves about how much our boy has changed. Rumors are spreading that the Count has been personally training him these days. The training Christian is going through is said to be so tough that even senior knights can barely endure it. We then promptly cut to our boy, who is cutting down stuff with the new sword techniques he has learned. Seeing his progress, even the Count is astonished at how fast Christian is adapting. Like he's learning in days. The Count is further shocked when he sees Christian pull off another technique against a training dummy, slicing it limb from limb. Apparently, Chris mixed the mud swordsmanship with the black scythe sword energy, creating an ultimate technique capable of cutting clean through, something mud swordsmanship alone couldn't achieve. Of course, the Count's soul practically leaves his body upon seeing such prowess. Normally, using 2 techniques at the same time would make it difficult to cast curses, but Chris shrugs it off as super easy. In fact, it's barely even an inconvenience for him. 15 days pass, and we see our boy totally drained on the ground. While this dude can pull off complex swordsmanship mojo, he can't handle the strain of cardio after running. What's worse, there's no way to cheat his way out of it since stamina accumulates gradually. As he catches his breath, Deputy Commander Mellon pops up out of nowhere. She's just here to give him a soft reminder about the looming duel, which is just around the corner. She's eagerly anticipating the fateful day when they will exchange blows again. While he's trying his best to improve, she believes it's still not enough to close the power gap between them. Thus, his dream of making her kneel before him is just a thought that exists in his head. But Chris is confident, determined to make this thought a reality. She likes his warrior spirit, so before leaving, she commends him for it and hopes to see him bring out the best version of himself, just so he can entertain her enough. For context, Melon is currently an upper 4-star. Within a single stage, there are 3 tiers: lower, middle, and upper. Even though Christian is an upper 1-star, he's still way below her level. But it looks like our bro already has a perfect plan to overcome this gap. After all, he's a rich brat now, and he plans to leverage that to his advantage. Later, he meets his evil spirit maid, Marie, who looks drop-dead gorgeous. Since this is their first outing together, she made sure to dress properly. It almost seems like she's turning this into a date. Christian, of course, denies inviting her along. He had only told her to prepare his bags, and that's it. But the way Marie looks so obsessive, it doesn't seem like the poor guy can catch a break. He even asked his father if he could lay off this obsessive, love-struck evil spirit and get an attendant who's human. But his father sadly reminded him of the master-servant contract Christian has with Marie. After all, a high-ranked banshee can't be managed without a contract. What's worse is that if he wants to cancel this contract, he's required to have a deep kiss with Marie. Back to the present, Christian once again reminds Marie that she can't come, as he's headed to a place where they'll encounter a lot of people. He worries that she might end up hurting people with her spiritual energy, which he doesn't like. Of course, Marie starts acting like a helpless, cute, snobbing puppy. After further guilt-tripping him about how she hasn't seen the outside world in decades, she finally charms her way into convincing him. While Christian reluctantly gives her permission to tag along, he still wants her to stay away from other people. The girl literally flips from a sobbing mess to a charming pretty lady upon getting permission. As she starts following him, she's quite curious about the purpose of this outing, to which he says that he wants to rack up some profits. Marie quickly showers him with the gold coins he told her to carry, reminding him that he already has plenty of money. So why does he need more? First of all, he makes it clear that this money isn't enough, and secondly, he wants her to put the damn money back. Anyhow, she continues to guess what he might be after, perhaps more gold or land ownership. But every guess she makes is way off the mark. Once they get to the carriage they're supposed to drive, Christian is hit by yet another uninvited guest tagging along on this journey. And that person is, of course, his little brother. Something Chris didn't expect. Apparently the kid wants to watch over him, in case he returns to his scoundrel self again. Also, it doesn't make it any better that this man reveals his intentions of gambling. Dude's trying to have a portfolio like the Tate brothers. Gambling isn't exactly a bad thing, especially since they're demons, and it's an activity recommended by their king. To make sure things go right, Thurn wants to follow his brother, which gives Chris the impression that he's really starting to worry for him. He teases the kid about it, causing a funny reaction from his baby brother. Thurn wants to beat him at the game, while Chris is starting to realize he's going to have so much fun exploiting the crap out of him. Arriving at their glamorous destination, both Marie and Thurn are stunned. To properly attend the event, Chris hands them a bunch of masks to wear to ensure their disguise. Also, he tasks her with a secret mission that Thurn doesn't know about. Chris simply instructs him to follow along, and shortly afterwards, they make their way inside the building. Immediately, they're taken as a joke by the people around. They were like fresh bait to line up their pockets after all. In the mood to have some fun, Chris makes a bet with his brother. The goal is to make the most amount of money in 1 hour, and the loser gets to decide a title for the other person. Chris picks out a long-ass title for his brother to call him upon his loss, and he excellently exploits his little brother's ego to force him into accepting the bet. The little brother goes on ahead with a fiery resolve. As for Chris, in his first game he wins rather easily, but he knows the dark secrets of the gambling den. The house is smart, it goads your ego by slowly handing you small wins at the start, and shortly after, pull the rug under you the second their target places a giant bet. Though he knew about their dark secrets, the same wasn't true for his brother. He kept losing because he was caught in their trap. What's worse, Chris was pissing him off in an effort to make him lose even more. As they're arguing about how much money they lost, Chris notices that the con men have already placed their eyes on his brother being a loser. He senses that they'll soon try to exploit the kid. Annoyed, Thurn goes on to gamble some more, even against Chris's warnings. But deep down, this is what he wants. Some time passes and Thurn ends up losing some more. In that duration, Marie, who had turned invisible, already located all of the con men working against them. Meanwhile, poor Thurn loses a staggering 10,000 amount. After the gambling session, Chris goes on to meet a certain merchant. The servants are shocked by his sudden arrival, and he wastes no time by ordering them to call over their master. Grantle of the Merchant Guild happily assists the young lord. He's renowned as the shrewd merchant, but the truth is, he's actually the owner of the gambling den they visited. Chris requests a private chat with the bastard, accusing him of scamming his baby brother with his con men. In his defense, the merchant explains that he has no control over the actions of his men as he only owns the gambling hall. But Marie instills the literal fear of death in this man as he kneels down apologizing for what he did. He pleads for mercy and is willing to offer compensation for the troubles caused. The conversation is right where Chris wanted it to be, as he demands 1,000,000 rupees for the damages. Even the merchant is shocked by his demand and shares that they don't have that kind of money around. So this guy drops the ball and goes all the way down to 200,000 rupees instead. Thankfully, the merchant can afford that, even though it would cost them a lot. Finally, Chris has one last request. The scene jumps to the aftermath of what Chris bought with the amount. He got a lot of combat equipment and even received the Holy Sword Grenade as a bonus artifact. This weapon is truly special, as it was made by the sacrifice of the hero's soul. The weapon remained in use even after the hero's corrupted state, and it was once highly revered by the demons. But in its current state, it is abandoned and gathering dust. Chris has a plan for it eventually. Aside from that, he hands Marie a beautiful pendant that she was eyeing on as a gift, clarifying that this doesn't mean anything else. Marie is stunned, because it's the first time after her death that she received a gift like this. It's truly special to her. Satisfied with his decision, Chris decides that it's time for them to go home. Marie responds with the happiest smile and offers him even more blood juice from now on. Which sounds weird until she reveals that the strawberry juice he's been drinking with glee already contained some of it. Bro is hoping to God that it's just some twisted joke from her end. Also, Chris realizes that he's actually forgetting about something, or rather someone. It's actually Thurn, who was robbed to death until he only had 1 rupee left to his name. Thurn roars at his brother for basically sleeping his ass off and abandoning him. Because this dude nearly got himself sold off as a slave, if not for the fact that someone recognized him. The sleepyhead reminds Thurn that he should be referring to him by a different name. After all, the kid lost a bet after all, so now he has to bear the consequences. A look of horror looms over Thurn's soul as he realizes he has to permanently address his shithead of a sibling by Honorable King Emperor Majesty Big Brother now. He tries voicing the name out loud. The poor guy eats up all the embarrassment while Chris enjoys torturing him. He reminds him to address him with proper respect from now on. Thurn turns to leave, vowing to turn the tables and make him regret this one day, but I doubt that day will ever come. Meanwhile, the playful Chris realizes that his inevitable death will come at the hands of this young boy, and he knows the scumbag Eshid is involved for such an outcome. As the son of Langham, the acting patriarch of his dark magic clan, Eshid is boasted as the top heir of the family. And even though Chris isn't exactly Christian but merely inhabiting his body, if he were to become the heir, it's inevitable for him to ultimately cross paths with Eshid. Knowing what happens to him in the future, he is hell-bent on declaring his revenge against Eshid. But for now, he needs the full support of Melon to worry about. The holy blade known as the Grenade has met many challenges throughout its lifetime, and yet, the only reason no one touches it anymore is because not a single man was able to conquer the blade. Our boy is curious how he stacks up on that list, and grasps it tightly, when all of a sudden issues him a small shock. Which means the sword doesn't take a liking to his dark magic powers, which is to be expected considering it is the representation of the light. However, Bro is ready to bend the rules on this one, and believes deciphering the pattern of its magic power should do the trick for him. Then he begins hammering the shit out of the blade, knowing that it's doing something. Showing his conviction, Chris declares that he's got all the time in the world to beat the ever-living shit out of the weapon until it gives up and finally obeys him. The fucking hilarious part about all of this is that even the weapon is shivering hearing him declare that. A few days passed, and Chris turned up at the training grounds to meet his father. To his shock, he sees a familiar woman before his eyes, until the realization reaches him. This woman is none other than the commander of the Black Shadow Knights, a beautiful and stern lady called Marion. She's got a long history behind her, as she's the daughter of the Elder Clan's head, and the master of the Dark Magic Clan, as well as serving as the older sister to his father and Langham. Marion protects the Elder Clan head and also takes care of any secret missions within the clan. In other words, he was seeing the baddest bitch alive among the elites of the Dark Magic Clan, though that only struck his curiosity on what she was doing here. Count Khazar tells his son about Marion's purpose. Apparently she wants to resolve the matter regarding Cox, and finds it problematic that Chris committed a hasty decision on ending the man's life. Realizing that she might be serving as an ally to Eshid, Chris thinks that he's in trouble. He teasingly remarks that it's interesting for an important figure such as herself to tend to a rather insignificant matter. Addressing the child's boldness, the woman clarifies that it's not she's here for Cox on behalf of her superior, but instead, she's here for Chris. Hearing that, Chris quickly realizes that he may have gotten the golden ticket to finally win the Elder Clan head over. However, Marion is of a different opinion, and thinks that it's arrogant of the boy to challenge someone like Melon while boasting the strength of a mere 2-star warrior. She even suggests calling off the match, but our boy isn't ready to throw in the towel. He reveals his control over Grunade, shocking the woman greatly. Marion wasn't expecting him to be this much of a troublemaker, and even hollers at her brother for saying untrue things about his son. After all, Chris was planning to use a holy sword in the upcoming match. He taunts her, questioning if he's not allowed to use such a weapon, especially since his only objective is to win, no matter the method at his disposal. Marion surprisingly remarks that even the Elder Clan head couldn't conquer Grunade, so a mere boy like Chris is only going to meet his doom for being arrogant enough to use it. However, Chris is in the mood to fuck with her ego and fully unsheathes the blade, revealing that he's got it completely under his control. At first, Marion questions if this is some kind of trickery or if he's using a fake, but the moment she grabs onto the blade, it burns the crap out of her hand, causing her to toss the blade aside. She can't believe that Chris is casually picking up the weapon without any issues. He doesn't give away the main reason, but he does reveal one thing. The only reason he's able to do the impossible is because he's a genius. His confident declaration just now impressed his father, though their attention is thwarted when Melon walks right out and joins the conversation. She's impressed that he was able to tame the blade, but argues that the outcome of their battle will not change, as she'll make sure today is his last. The battle begins with a heavy swing from Melon, causing our boy to go on the defensive. Her speed and strength are on a whole different level, without any restrictions holding her down. Chris's confidence is starting to wane as their blades go on to clash against each other. Since Grunade is a holy sword, it affects the dark power of Melon's blade. But an even more impressive feat is the fact that this boy is maneuvering excellently while using the blade. He's actually pushing Melon back, causing Count Khazar to question how this is happening. The observant Marion breaks down the process of his attacks. Chris is adjusting the demon's energy every second so that he doesn't suffer the backlash from the holy sword. Breaking off from the confrontation, Melon inquires if her opponent was trying to predict her movements just now. Chris playfully shares that he's got a good eye. Now he knows that swordsmanship requires an initial stance to conduct a full attack. For example, a downward strike requires raising one's arm, and your shoulders give off the movement. This detail didn't change whether you were a professional fighter or a beginner. Melon decides to put out all the stops and shocks him with a different approach. She uses some kind of binding spell that catches Chris. Though he was capitalizing on her swordsmanship, Melon reminds him that she's also a mage on top. However, even this doesn't affect him much, as Chris effortlessly dispelled her attack using a purification artifact. Bro has to thank his dad for his artifact, even though Count Khazar doesn't even recall giving it to him. Chris reveals that he's quite the excellent thief, so it's okay. Apart from that, he believes one's equipment is also a testament to their skill. Saying so, he tosses some kind of sphere that explodes up in the air. Melon was distracted when the real orb came from just ahead of her, exploding viciously and wrapping her in the destruction. Chris remembers purchasing this artifact as well, but he knows this much isn't enough to beat his opponent. Melon's blade cuts past the fire and reaches Chris, who not only blocks the attack, but also shatters her weapon with a smile. The more this fight goes on, the more he impresses Count Khazar. Melon emerges from the aftermath of the orb, and maniacally reveals that she's having way too much fun. The chick's gone crazy, and she's curious how he's going to deal his next attack. Even Marion is afraid of seeing her lash out in such a state. But Chris capably uses this moment to his advantage, letting her attack slip by as he pins the blade to her neck. The battle is won, much to Melon's surprise, Marion's disappointment and Khazar's amazement. Instead of being a sore loser, Melon simply lets out a laugh, realizing that he did all that just to make a point. And now, he wants the reward for the proposal he made. Though he's also fine with respecting her wishes if she doesn't want to serve him. Melon questions if she can have more exciting duels if she chooses to stick by his side. Chris promises that they'll have tons of battles, and officially makes her his own ally. After the fight, we get to see Marion's perspective, who hasn't forgotten his meticulous control over the dark energy. She vividly remembers her master being unable to withstand Grunade for more than a few moments. To control the Holy Sword, one would have to constantly alter the waves of dark magic, bypassing its rejection effect. But in practice or real combat, that's a really tough call. Even the clan head only thought the demon of Gehenna, or perhaps the demonic dragon, could achieve such a feat. Or maybe some talented fool who could easily manipulate the course of dark energy without trouble. In this case, Chris is that person. Having seen what happened in his fight, Marion amuses the possibility of her father's wish finally coming to existence. In the next scene, we get to see the intimidating orc chef skillfully making a strawberry cake before Chris's eyes. His skills are no joke, and the chef is curious what brings the young master here today of all places. Apparently, Chris wants to make some cookies so that he can give them to someone. His annoying freaky-ass maid is jealous he might be looking for a girlfriend. But Chris waves away any thoughts, and even though the chef offers to make cookies for him, this time he wants to handle the process on his own. As he's saying all that, Bro gets hit with a damn splash of strawberry mush. The orcs are viciously beating the crap out of strawberries, to the point Chris is questioning if this is real blood. Moving forward, we get to see Chris coming to see off his great aunt Marion. He knew she was about to leave and wanted to say goodbye, a gesture she appreciates. Even more, he hands her a gift-wrapped present. They're delicious cookies he made with love, much to her delight. Marion really enjoys the gift, and Count Khazar suddenly realizes why his son asked him about her favorite snack. Turns out he's a master manipulator with the smallest of details. Marion is even more stunned to hear that the kid personally baked these for her. Upon taking a bite, she's instantly swooned by the taste. Chris wanted to hear those words, glad to hear that. Of course, his aunt wants to return him a gift for his gesture, so she lets him ask for anything. This was the moment he was waiting for. Chris deepens his tactic by requesting her to be his true aunt from now on, even though they're already blood-related. Marion wonders if there's a deeper meaning behind the boy's words, and recalls that he's going to participate in the Dark Rite ritual. She realizes that he wants her support in the upcoming succession conflict. Unfortunately, she can't lend him a favor like that. The thing is, the representatives of the main family must be unbiased in the outcome. That is their one and only rule. Chris argues that he wasn't really looking for something like that. All he cares about is having a closer relationship with his aunt. Marion can't believe that this kid has no ulterior motives behind his words. He puts on an Oscar-level acting performance with his adorable face, pleading with her to help him out. Marion likes his forwardness, and knowing that he baked delicious cookies for her, she's taken a liking to him. She requests more cookies from his side on her next visit, and seeing their relationship blossom like this, Count Khazar wipes a tear off his eyes. Chris is out here really trying his hardest, telling his aunt he's gonna fuck up the taste if she doesn't assist him when needed. Marion smiles, addressing the boy and finally offering him a chance to join the Black Shadow Knights. She's already accounted for his skills for his battle against Melon, and there's a great potential resting inside of him, even greater than the Elder Clan head. But before he's able to bring out that potential, his rivals will pose him a lot of trouble. Marion is worried about that dark future, while Chris reveals that he's okay with dying as long as he's able to conquer the obstacles in his path. Despite her invitation, Chris is confident in his victory and assures her he'll win. This kind of confidence is almost detrimental from her perspective, but she knows that he's an exception and might be telling the truth. That's why she can't stop him. Marion mounts her horse and offers the boy a final piece of advice, strongly warning him against the first young lady. Julianne appears to be the gentlest of them all, but Marion deems her a greater threat than even Eshid, and claims that he'll understand why soon enough. Chris appreciates her advice and bids her farewell. The scene ends with Marion gaining a positive view of her nephew as she returns the farewell. Back in his room, Chris is in a state of contemplation. Marion and his father were both competent 6-star level warriors, but he's yet to hear much about their contribution during the Great War or what role they served. The Magic Empire boasted many combatants, and he guessed that the number would at least be enough to give the Forces of Light serious trouble. However, he isn't looking for a repeat of his past. For now, he is compelled by the desire to become even stronger. In the next scene, he shares a meeting with his father, who called his boy for a talk. But to his utter shock, he couldn't believe that Chris had already reached 2-star level. The kid has grown to that level in a month's time. Chris is acting casual, reminding his father that he's built differently. Returning to the topic at hand, he wonders what's up. Count Khazar reveals that the main house has contacted them, and that he told them about the participation of both Thurn and Chris for the Sacred Dark Ritual. Unfortunately, only Thurn was approved to join the competition, and it's because of Chris's shitty reputation of wasting their family's wealth and engaging in all kinds of heinous acts. The allegations, or more like straight facts in this case, are hitting our boy like a Mike Tyson uppercut. He gets launched to the ground and is at the verge of death when his father oddly voices support for his son. Chris gets up and asks if Langham was responsible for the main decision, but as it turns out, it's someone else's hand at play. Both father and son realize that it's the working of Loin de Baron. Loin is the direct descendant of the main house and the main celebrity of the ceremony. Let's explore what the Holy Dark Ceremony is truly like. It's a ritual where certain candidates share a special kind of darkness extracted from the dimensional shadow. Since the amount is limited and can only be shared to a certain extent, candidates are supposed to brawl it out to vouch for their competence. This also means that the more powerful candidates end up with the most amount of darkness. As a consequence, that is the key to becoming the family's heir or the prince. In this case, Lowen's victory will make him the 6th prince, and if that happens, Chris's plans will be shattered. Count Khazar emphasizes that he'll speak to them once more, and they can always use Marion if something happens. But Chris stops him, believing he's more than capable of handling this situation. Khazar grabs his shoulder, acknowledging the boy's talent. However, he wants to support him this time, a gesture that the kid really appreciates. However, This kid is a bratty scoundrel who has his own ways of doing something, and he makes an ugly, villainous face just to prove his father a point. The boy questions if Count Tyraman's family is also participating in the ceremony. Turns out the third son is indeed a participant, and that kid, who is even more of a lowlife than Chris, ended up vouching against his participation. Seeing his father's temper tantrum, Chris is realizing that his father really loves his children apparently. He tells him to calm down, as he intends to make his haters eat their words. He knows that the Tyraman family hosts the Ebony Hunt event, so he's just going to become a participant of that hunt. The scene cuts to Marion returning to her lord after completing her mission. She speaks highly of Chris, much to the Elder Clan head's surprise, who remembers the kid being a fool and nothing more up until to this point. Of course, Marion believes that he's changed quite a lot, so the Patriarch proceeds to ask if the boy meets the qualifications to fulfill his wish. The commander reflects that this wish, the one that he's so desperate about, requires overturning fate itself, the desire to break the shackles of death with forbidden magic. Though Marion is unsure at this point, she can say one thing with confidence. The kid is the closest chance of him ever achieving that impossible wish. Hearing those words, the Patriarch is glad, even though the family consensus is against his participation in the dark ceremony. Of course, not even the Lord Patriarch is willing to oppose the decision, because he thinks the kid should be able to find a solution for himself to overcome this challenge. Despite Marion arguing otherwise and vouching for the support of the kid's participation, the old geezer hauntingly quiets her shut. In her reflection of his demeanor, Marion remarks that this is just the kind of man he was. He had exceptional expectations and became ruthless in response. The Elder Clan head wasn't expecting her to speak so highly of the boy. Declaring bloodsucker, he calls for Simon, who is the head steward of the clan. Having heard the conversation in its fullest, Simon is tasked with the duty to watch over the boy in close proximity, observing his every action until the Holy Dark ceremony. Though he's happy to execute that command, Simon also wants to play a little prank on the child. The head Patriarch looks over with a cold stare and reminds him not to get too comfortable. Something tells me bloodsucker over here is dangerous as hell. Meanwhile, Marion wishes for the child to do his best, clearly worried for what's to come. The scene goes back to Chris, who's enjoying his analysis. Having reached the 2-star level poses a new challenge, and that is reaching the 3-star level, which seems far away for now. It's exactly why he requires ebony, and with it, he can gather a ton of magic in a relatively short amount of time. Thanks to the Tyraman family hosting the Ebony Hunt event, he's lucky to participate at this time. The only issue? It's that, even after achieving the goal of capturing Beast Carazo, acquiring ebony isn't guaranteed. A special condition has to be fulfilled to fully get your hands on it. Chris exits the carriage, meeting the old merchant who appears empty-handed. The moment he lets out his bag, our boy tosses it and reveals a bunch of damn coins as a gift for him. Clearly, he wasn't looking for these as a gift. Chris teases the crap out of him, reminding him that he knows about his illegal dealings going around and how the fat man has been avoiding taxes as well. These sudden fact checks are killing the man, but Chris is more than happy to turn a blind eye as long as the merchant cleans up his mess. Lastly, he's come here for a little something called the Grey Pill. It's an exquisite item only available on the black market. And what do you know? It's expensive as fuck. Chris doesn't give a damn and asks Marie to use her methods. The chick goes batshit crazy and whips out her torture weapons to get him. It's the easiest method because this guy instantly folds, much to Chris's amusement. On top of that massive request, he also wants him to catch a good dagger and some armor for him alongside it. Saying that, he boards the carriage, and while the old man is cursing the shit out of him on the inside, he crumbles in defeat. Marie learns that the young master has one more destination to take care of before returning home. He tells the coachman to stop and goes his way. Marie sees him staring down some kind of aphrodisiac. This pink elixir seems intimidating to our boy, while Marie is out here questioning if he's been engaging in sus activities lately. Chris denies the allegations while Marie's graphics bump up to 100 with that JoJo-ass stare. Chris apparently needs the aphrodisiac for someone else, specifically his father, who appears to be getting older. As for the server, he tells the bastard to keep this conversation secret until his grave. Anyway, Chris returns to meet his father alongside his brother. Torturing Thurn like he should, bro, makes him say out his long-ass title. Thurn simply advises his brother not to get hurt during the ebony hunt, while our boy teases him for being worried about his brother. Their quarrel is stopped with their father ordering Chris to beat the crap out of the Tyraman family's contestants. The genius mage promises that he'll return with good news. Funnily enough, Count Khazar is still not over the long title and teases Thurn about it as well. The scene cuts to the Tyraman estate, where an orange goblin waiter doesn't permit Chris to enter the manor. Chris learns that the young Lord Alois has issued an exclusive order, forbidding him from entering. Applying pressure with his words, the young master questions if he's being told to stay elsewhere in the capital. Poor Goblin is intimidated, but alas, he basically says yes. Though Chris's servants jump in to protect his name, he stops them and continues to apply pressure, asking who's going to pay for the hotel. The servant responds that he can merely charge the Tiraman family for it, which is music to our boy's ears. Something tells me this man is about to break their bank. And that's exactly what happens, because this smartass actually goes for the wildest hotel, which is going to cost them 100,000 rupees for their stay. Chris is more than happy to burn someone else's money while he's at it. While they're discussing what to do next, the trunk opens with Marie popping out like a terrible surprise. Chris wasn't expecting this outcome and wonders what the hell's wrong with her. She ended up hiding in his luggage as his most loyal maid. Chris is clearly annoyed when all of a sudden, Alois the Third Prince roars at him for handing them a giant bill. Our boy treats him like a joke, despite Alois being the star of the ebony hunt for the year. Of course, Chris didn't just want to stay in any hotel, so he picked the nicest estate he could think of. He taunts Alois for being mad, especially when he's the one who issued that kind of order. Getting pissed, Alois unleashes a beast, ready to throw hands right here and now. This creature is actually the Tiraman-style beast, with an ability to control magic. Different from the taming techniques, this technique involved the usage of dark magic to control beasts through fear. Certain feelings are instilled within the creature, and the process is complex, requiring time to master. Regardless, Chris doesn't give a damn as he's more than happy to beat down the kitty cat. He asks Marie to whip out their own defense against a scary kitty like the one in front of them. In response, Chris prepares himself a damn staff, provoking Alois to come try him out. The enraged prince releases the intimidating creature to attack Chris. And I'm not gonna lie, he might have blocked that lunge just now, but that must have taken some serious balls to stand his ground. The creature actually knocks Chris aside, making him taunt the third prince for abusing numbers in a fight. He lays down a condition. The condition is simple. If he wins this battle, he's going to join the ebony hunt as a bodyguard, and not a drive man. Alois is too busy getting enraged. He mounts the creature and attempts to crush Chris in a single attack. The beast actually shatters the ground upon impact, but the human is nowhere to be found. Bro pops up from behind like a sneaky-ass ninja and beats the shit out of Alois with his wooden stick of destruction. After eating a good portion of his attacks, Alois gets even more agitated. However, this time, when the creature tries to charge up on him, it sees something. It is driven back by the intimidating fear of death looming over Chris, causing it to whimper away like a scaredy cat. Alois, now even more ashamed, doesn't know what's going on. The funny thing is, all Chris had to do was chalk up an illusion spell to fool the creature, but he thinks it works like a charm against silly creatures. The third prince refuses to bow down and conjures a second beast in its place. This time it's a horse. Chris is unafraid and lectures him on an interesting tidbit regarding punks. Then he lunges forth sharply, knocking his fucking ass out with a single strike. Chris completes his sentence, emphasizing that he isn't gonna wait the entire fucking chapter to end just to let his opponent whip out an ability. Bro really said this isn't Dragon Ball Z and you ain't Goku turning Super Saiyan 3. The indulgent young master is enjoying a gambling session shortly afterwards. Yeah, apparently this is his way of resting, which is quite the expensive rest if you ask me. The scoundrel merely wants to enjoy honoring his name. Marie is okay with him doing whatever the heck he wants, so long he doesn't drink. Poor guy has to deal with ginger ale instead of alcohol, which is arguably a tougher battle than the one he had earlier. The servants of the Tiraman family are baffled to keep an eye on this guy upon Arlos's orders. Churs turns to offer them a chance to enjoy the game with him. After all, he did end up kicking their master's butt, so there's a good chance Arlos won't be waking up until tomorrow. The offer seems tempting, but his servants are loyal to Arlos, so they decline him. Well, what ends up really happening is this guy getting fully knocked out after indulging a bit too much. Bro is so out cold that even the servants think they shouldn't worry about him anymore. They're just gonna file the report and check in for the day. The funny thing? This was his plan all along. Chris effortlessly manipulates them and wonders if they're about to move. He packs his stuff, telling Marie not to follow him, which, as you can expect, must be a really tough call for the freaky maid. Also, remember the aphrodisiac from earlier? She still thinks he's using it for himself instead of his father. Marie is ashamed that he's going out to enjoy some time with the ladies. Chris is baffled by her lack of filter because apparently she thinks in a singular dimension only. The scene cuts to the Kython mountain range, which is supposed to be the hidden domain of the Tiraman family. Demonic beasts run rampant here, which is why Chris is locating their hunting ground. He quickly finds it and thinks the security is pretty crap with only 2 guards protecting the place. Thanks to his invisibility magic that he learned from his stupid maid, he's able to go right past them without worrying about getting caught. Walking right up to the altar, Chris knows that this is where the accumulated darkness reaches its climax. The place is just as spooky as he thought, but now he has to think of a way to gather the darkness. Recalling his conversation with a damn furry, he remembers that the goal is to make Carazo take its own life. The beast must be driven to extreme fear. to the point it sees death as its only way of escape. In the conflict that will follow a feeling of terror and joy, a perfect moment will arise, where light will transform into darkness. It's also the reason Tyraman controls beasts through their darkness hunts. Right now, Chris's true goal is to steal their secret technique and allow the mix of aphrodisiac he obtained to send Karazo into a forceful frenzy. Then he'll steal the darkness for himself. But unfortunately, he doesn't have enough time to master the technique, so he tries for an alternative way. Suddenly, Chris feels a terrifying presence, causing him to jolt back and wonder if there's someone around. But surprisingly, no one is there. He is drawn to an empty cave, which upon entering, he feels an incredible force of malice greeting him. This ominous place has a high-level dark magic barrier cast all over it. To his shock, what he is witnessing before his eyes is the Rift of Gehenna. Gehenna is actually the domain of the demons and fiends, and it is all kinds of scary. It's the one place connecting to the human realm, which leads to an interesting idea. Chris could actually force Karazo to this place using his perfect aphrodisiac serving as the bait. Convinced of this method, he thinks he's got what it takes to fulfill the hunt. But as he's turning around to leave, the bloodsucker pops out of the blue, impressed and intrigued by the young master's actions so far. He was there to witness Chris's fight against Arlos and his impressive manipulation against his servants. Now the child was about to unfold an elaborate scheme too. It excited the Grand Steward to play with him. Thinking of a plan, Simon reaches out to grasp the Rift of Gehenna, which ends up leaking blood as a consequence. The Rift calls out for his name, dubbing him as the Betrayer in a shocking plot twist. Simon makes his move. The day of the hunt is here at last, with Arlos representing the flag of his family. Chris talks some shit in his face for acting high and mighty despite getting his butt whooped. Arlos claps back by mocking him for bringing the unusable holy sword. But Chris thinks he should test the weapon's integrity by beating him with it. Their banter comes to a close when the third prince orders his team to lure Karazo to the altar. He wants the guards and the mages to follow him. While this is happening, Chris is wary of the secret bat eyeing them down. He's happy to assist the bratty prince and goes on to wait for the others at the altar. The mage is annoyed by him and asks him to sit around if he's going to act like a nuisance. Chris happily takes up on that offer and freely goes away, causing the mage to get enraged. Arlos controls him and emphasizes that they should focus on the hunt. Chris is told to guard the flag like the scoundrel he is, which is the easiest task in the world for now. As he's enjoying himself, he knows things are going his way. Also, he ended up acquiring the dagger and orb from Grantel just as planned. Chris observes Arlos and the mage busy with observation. He senses Karazo's presence as the beady-eyed beast arrives at last. From one look, you'd probably think this dumb animal is the cutest creature ever. Arlos is prepared and releases the magic ritual to bind the creature. But despite his tampering, Karazo only gets enraged instead of enticed under his command. The third prince didn't anticipate this outcome and gets bitch-slapped into the ground. The mage rushes to check on his master. To make matters worse, he's been inflicted with poison, causing the mages to erect a defensive barrier immediately. But watching this battle from afar, Chris believes nothing will go their way, especially since he's already caused the beast to go wild using the aphrodisiac. Thankfully, Arlos had the antidote on him, but even he knows they're going to face some serious trouble if this is what they're up against. The guards jump in to drive the creature back, but let's be real. They're not going to do anything against a giant enraged bird who tackles them away with its sheer size. Arlos is about to get slammed into the ground and braces for impact, when suddenly, Chris comes for his support, defending against the attack while at the same time savagely grilling Arlos to the ground. Bro tells him that he's pathetic and that he's willing to help as long as the third prince refers to him as a brother. Arlos is resistant until Chris amuses the possibility of letting this wild creature go on unleashing its fury against the prince. The bodyguards are already down, and the barriers aren't working. Arlos, despite his ego, begs the scoundrel to help him. Pleased to hear those words, Chris happily swipes away the creature with the swing of his weapon. He then uses a binding spell, shocking Arlos greatly with his sudden usage of the technique. However, in reality, he was just using a mockery of the original technique. It was nothing more than a mid-level technique. The beast Karazo resists, but luckily Chris controls it exceptionally well. Arlos realizes what's going on. Chris fooled him and took control of the beast for his personal goal. He leads Karazo all the way up to the secret cave of Gehenna. The place instills the fear of death inside the creature, until it reaches the golden state he was waiting for. Capitalizing on this opportune moment, Chris plunges his blade into the creature's body. By the time Arlos and his men arrive there, it's already done. The third prince is worried for their safety and emphasizes that they should leave as soon as possible. But Chris has no plans of doing so, and shows them the ashened orb he acquired from the beast. Clearly this wasn't what they were expecting. The mage roars at him for intervening, while Arlos actually does a 180 and thanks our boy for saving the lives of his men. After all, it's only because of him that they avoided a darker fate. It almost makes Chris feel bad, especially since he secretly ruined the hunt for him by swapping the orb with a fake. Still, Chris isn't about to fold, and reminds Arlos that he's gotta refer to him as a senior brother from now on. It's a teasing remark to someone who is years older than you already. In the middle of their banter, both of them experience a sudden and overwhelming pressure emanating from nearby. Two terrifying eyes stare down at them from the dark. Chris knows that they're in deep trouble the minute he lays his eyes on a demon of Gehenna. This giant monstrosity greets them with a scary face, and jumping to his protection, Arlos tells our boy to run away while he still can. I'm starting to like him a lot more now. That's a nice change. Taking note of the damn bat spying on them, Chris launches his blade aimed right at the bat, forcing a disruption to Simon's signal. He can't believe that the child noticed his connection, and now that his bat has been destroyed, he can't do anything in case things go wrong, not even after using his bloodline arts. Simon realizes he should hurry immediately, or else they will all die. Back to the cave, Chris expresses that he despises being secretly spied on. The demon laughs, believing that it's a death wish for the boy. Recalling his battles during the Age of Ruin, Chris knows for a fact that this guy is at least at the 5-star level. This means he can't face ugly Sukuna over here, but he can do one thing. Arlos shouts at him for wasting his magic power, and since Chris's sleeping spell didn't work on him just now, Bro deploys the old school method of punching the daylights out of him. With the prince unconscious, the demon amuses the possibility of a sacrifice being offered. The funny thing is, he's even ready to spare Chris for the tribute. Our boy tells him he yaps way too much and whips out the holy sword grenade. The demon is impressed, but he thinks it's pointless to take out a weapon that not even Chris himself can't use. He unleashes his first attack, causing Chris to block it. But even as competent as he is, he gets overwhelmed by the attack to the point he's coughing blood. Things are looking really bad, and the considerate demon offers the boy a second chance to sacrifice his companions. But nah, this guy is a born savage and plans to keep it that way as he spits in the demon's face. It's the closest fuck you without using any words. Chris frees himself and deploys the usage of the ebony he obtained, coating his blade in golden light. The demon of Gehenna is shocked that he's able to control the light despite being a creature of the dark. Chris is happy that he's got the demon shivering already. The demon forces a powerful attack to annihilate Chris from where he stands. In response, our boy unleashes a powerful swing of his blade, cutting right past the sphere of dark and severing the demon's body. But even after expending this much power, Chris understands that his body is not yet ready to control it yet. He faints shortly afterward, recalling the move he used in his previous life. The Dead Sea Flash, the move he used just now, is an ability inspired by the singular ray of light that rests above the Dead Sea. And despite using such a technique, his friend wasn't worthy of House Meyer. But he strongly believed in Chris's potential, believing that he would become the light to save their world. Now that's the definition of a true homie's confidence in you. Observing the boy's performance, Mefina, a higher being of the dark and the first seat of the 7 circles of Gehenna, intriguingly watches over him. Back at the estate, our boy finally wakes up after being unconscious for 2 days straight. His body feels cranky, but okay. Luckily, the darkness he obtained is with him. He recalls hearing Mefina's voice right before he fainted, realizing he's getting himself into more trouble than he thought. In this world, the demons who were promising with their talents were often noticed by the high-ranking devils, who nurtured their growth with their blessings. But that's just a crappy way for the losers who simply cannot grow on their own, or at least that's what our protagonist believes. Also, he thinks Mefina can't be that high up if she's from the 7th Circles party. In any case, Count Tyraman, who looks like a Chad unlike his son, mind you, personally comes to greet the boy. Chris gets up to greet the Lord properly, but he's told to rest. He tells him about the investigation team that was sent the other day. Their investigations revealed the tampering of some outside mage, but lucky for them, the demon was called back at the end. Still, they were lucky they weren't wiped out at that moment. Interestingly, Chris notes that they have yet to find out that he was the one who took down the demon, which is fair, since no one would ever believe that. Tyraman admits that he owes the child an apology, mistreating him as a scoundrel upon his first visit. Secondly, he owes the kid a thank you and declares him a benefactor to their house. Chris plays it off coolly, acting as if he was acting right out of duty and for the sake of the greater good. Though he's gaslighting him, he personally feels bad. Tyraman is moved by his words and even offers to carry out the boy's favors if he needs something. Refusing to let this chance go, the boy requests Lord Tyraman to reconcile with House Khazar. It's quite the shocking request, but it's better for the two houses to cooperate with each other instead of opposing them. He wants to be rivals with the prince and assures a healthy competition to come, a relationship with many promising aspects. Lord Tyraman reflects for a moment, but Chris continues to hammer down his persuasion, recalling how their families only got into bad terms because of the main house scheming them against each other. Also, if the branch families ended up uniting, It would pose a clear threat to the main family, which is why this is their method of exercising control. Lord Tyraman wonders if the boy is requesting a rebellion against the main family, which would be dangerous coming from a kid. Chris quickly denies that, and explains that they should simply behave more than just pawns on the board. Lord Tyraman likes the boy for his deep analysis, while Chris wonders if he'd be willing to fulfill his request. Giving in, the man promises to contact Count Khazar for a chance of reconciliation. Things are going just as planned. Chris hopes to acquire more allies and eventually contest the Age of Ruin with a strong alliance. Lord Tyraman also smacks his son for staying all quiet in this pivotal moment. Arlos actually hands him the ashen shard for his deeds. He remembers being unconscious, and held onto the shard for Chris when he woke up. Chris teases him for being grateful, and takes advantage of Arlos's ego. The scene causes his father to let out a laugh, presenting a gift from his side as well. It's a summoning stone that can be used to beast up to the tier 4 level. It's no joke, Chris even mentions it as a super rare item. Tyraman also intends to make a report to the Dark Ceremony to vouch for the boy's participation. Things are going swimmingly well for the protagonist, who got everything he wanted. Both the father and son leave his room so he can rest. Finally, Chris turns his attention to the one spying on him and asks him to come out. The bloodsucker, Simon, happily makes his presence known, shocked that the boy noticed him, even when Lord Tyraman could not. The chief steward of the Dark Mage clan has been meaning to exchange pleasantries with him. He's one of Lord Noga's top men. Chris suddenly remembers that this bastard is the master of the Blood Shadow Corps. Let's talk about the Blood Shadow Corps for a moment. It's a maddened group of individuals who commit slaughter and terrorism without caring for consequences. These guys don't care if their enemies are the Empire or the Light faction. And their leader? He's an 8-star level demon who cracked into the 9-star level by the Age of Ruin event, becoming the 10th Demon King with his might. This same dude is the reason for their close encounters with death. As for Simon, he just so happens to be the legitimate blood son of the Demon King. Simon is impressed by the young master's performance so far, and even reveals his knowledge of Chris wiping out a demon on his own. The revelation is shocking, because he clearly killed the surveillance bat, and even then this dude ended up knowing about what went down. Chris tries to feign ignorance, but the sharp steward isn't ready to let him fuck around. He remembers visiting the cave where not even a single trace of the demon was left. This meant that reverse summoning hadn't been used, and it was Chris who dealt the final blow. Now, the only question left is how. How was he able to wipe the demon from existence? Also, the steward makes it very clear he'll report this conversation to his master. Biting back, Chris expresses that he isn't planning on exposing his trump card. Despite Simon's insistence, he reminds the bloodsucker that he wasn't going to let his secrets out just because of the Elder Clan head. Observing this side of him, Simon assesses that this boy is like a beast who likes to hide his claws until the end. He finds him even more amusing now. Even more, Chris catches him with his words. You see, there's just no way to tell the difference between erasure and reverse summoning, which is why Tyraman couldn't tell either. But Simon, for some reason, was so adamant in his certainty and use of full erasure. Chris wonders why. Chris finally drops the bombshell against the aggressor, revealing that it was Simon who summoned the demon in the first place, and he amused the possibility of reporting the truth of the incident to Lord Noga. After all, the incident did put multiple noble families to be placed in harm. Realizing he's cornered, Simon assumes full responsibility. But Chris is fine with not reporting the truth, because he's playing the long game of keeping the chief steward in debt. The bloodsucker sharply notes that he's making a deal, and gleefully admits that he's done an act of mercy. He vanishes, hoping to meet him again. Though he left, Chris understands that this guy is one of the main variables for the Age of Ruin event. That means he's got to have a good relationship with him, so that he bears the capacity to alter the dark future to come. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really loving the main character's actions to fulfill his future plans. Every action is intentional. Marie is finished with their preparations to head back to the main estate. He's surprised to see Alois greeting them to ask if they were about to leave. Policing his title, Chris reminds him to use the word he gave him, despite being 2 years younger than the third prince. Anyway, Alois actually came here with a warning. He remembers Chris dubbing them as family, so he thinks it's only right to share this information. Alois tells him to be wary of Lowen's schemes, as he was the main opposing force against his participation in the ceremony, especially since Chris is just a 2-star mage. Then there's the fact that the main family possesses the best elixirs and the strongest techniques, as well as the blessings from demons. In short, Chris is going to be destroyed at their hands if he's not careful. But the confident genius offers a warning to Alois instead, insisting that he does not participate in the upcoming ceremony for his own good. This puts Alois in a state of rage, because he realizes this scoundrel wants to hoard the dark magic for himself. Also, Chris declares that he's going to crush his opponent, no matter who stands before him in the dark ceremony. And that's about it for their discussion as he tells Marie to move, once again repeating his warning to Alois. Having reached the house of Count Khazar, Thurn is shocked that his brother left for his training shortly after his return. Apparently he wants to be left alone until the dark ceremony ritual. Thurn ends up chasing after his brother, funnily still addressing him by that long-ass title. He wants to duel him to uphold the promise, while Chris is rather impressed by his brother's steady growth to reach the mid-2-star level. Though he wants to decline in favor of his training, Chris remembers that his brother was also going to participate in the Dark Rite ceremony. He recommends postponing the duel until the end of his training session and promises Thurn that he won't delay it any longer. Agreeing to the compromise, the kid brother leaves him with an impression of stubbornness. It reminds Chris of a certain person he knew in his past life. Sitting alone in his room, he understands that he's got an entire month before the event of the ritual. So he bites down on the ebony orb, cringing at the bitter taste as he crashes on his bed. Its dark energy is even more chaotic than he imagined, but to his amazement, he also senses a glimmer of light energy from within the orb. He wonders if the Karazo beast's emotions made an impression on the orb, and also realizes why the demons have a hard time absorbing the ebony orb. Still, that didn't matter to him, as long as he could become one with the light force. Normally, demons wasted this kind of energy, but he wasn't planning on letting an important resource go to waste. At last, he absorbs all of it into his light core, the power changing him to his very senses. Chris closes his eyes shut, implying the completion of the process. The scene cuts away Lady Idaline, who is handed a report of the Ebony Hunt's investigation by her servant. She's been keeping an eye on Chris, who apparently survived an encounter with a demon during the hunting event. Half a month later, since Christian got back from the Tiramin debacle, Thurn stormed his big brother's room for their promised duel day. As soon as Lil Bro entered, he noticed a significant change in his brother's aura. Christian was quite amused that young Thurn came first thing in the morning for a quick pummeling. Lil Bro was speechless. Christian's dominating presence is leagues beyond what it was just half a month ago. His word is his bond since Thurn is so desperate for a beating. That wish shall be Christian's command. But they'll only duel if Thurn agrees to give up on the upcoming scared Dark Rite upon losing. The Rite is a brutal competition. Weaklings should just stay out of it. Incensed at being called a weakling, Thurn drew his blade. Since Lil Bro is blind to brotherly concern,